Hello and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to talk about all of the books that I hope to read in June 2026. And I have some recent reads on here as well as some backlist, and I'm gonna start a very long series and see how far I can get. On this video, I'm also going to play a TBR card game that allows me to pick 5 random books from my Kindle backlist to add to the list that I've predetermined for this month as well. And I'm going to do that at the end of the video. So hang around for the TBR game and let's dive into the books that I have on my list. So I have 3 books from previous months that I have not been able to get to, and I always start with those. The first book is called The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue, and this is a book that takes place in Ireland. It is about a friends, lovers, Ireland in chaos, and a young woman desperately trying to manage all 3. And so this is one that I believe is being made into an adaptation, so I've had this on my list for a while, and I wanted to get to that. I also wasn't able to get to The Breathing Book by Donna Farhi. This is actually a book that I've started, but just have not completed yet. It is focused on breathwork as it pertains to yoga, and so this is one of the many books that I have read on yoga, and I try to read at least one a month. So I haven't gotten to this one yet, but hope to get to it in June. And then I also have still on my list a book that I originally got as an advanced reader's copy. It is called Marion by Lee Rowan. And this is a retelling of Psycho, where the woman in the shower is not killed and she actually kills her assailant instead. Sorry if that gave away a spoiler for Psycho if you have not seen the film. But this book takes place in present day. So it is slightly different than kind of the historical setting of Psycho and the original film. So looking forward to getting to all of those, hopefully in the month of June. The books that I have added to my list for this upcoming month include the Creativity Workbook for Coaches and Creatives. This is edited by Eric Maisel, and it's got 50 plus inspiring exercises from creativity coaches worldwide. And I love to coach around creativity, and this is a book I've had on my shelf for a while. I actually own a physical copy of this, so looking forward to reading that. I also have as an advanced reader's copy a book that I believe is actually coming out this month called The Necessary Goodbye by Peter Banko. This is basically a book about how to fire people well. And although I have not had to do this a ton in my career, I actually think this is something we're seeing so many like layoffs and other things happening that I was really drawn to this book just to kind of see like what are the like best practices that are recommended for this when it's so challenging to do. I also have on my list The Fine Art of Lying by Alexandra Andrews. This is a book that I believe is in one of the like celebrity book clubs. It was chosen by Reese's Book Club. And I believe it is about a young wife and mother who's in a world of wealth and privilege. And it says there's a rash mistake that sets off a domino effect of murder and betrayal. And it's set in the art world. And I've heard great things about it. So wanted to add that to my list. I also have on my list Count My Lies by Sophie Stava. This is a book that caught my attention because it is also being made into an adaptation, and I wanted to read the book before the adaptation comes out or before I watch the adaptation. It is described as a read-in-one-night suspense thriller narrated by a compulsive liar whose little white lies allow her to enter into the life and comfort of a wealthy married couple who are harboring much darker secrets themselves. So looking forward to picking that one up. I also have on my list a book called The Wrong Daughter by Dandy Smith. This is a new author for me, and this book is also described as kind of a thriller. It's shockingly twisty, addictively dark, and engrossingly intense psychological suspense. And it says a woman's world is shattered when her sister returns 16 years after she was abducted from their childhood bedroom. And they are basically trying to figure out what happened when she comes back. So interesting, looking forward to that. I'm also adding a new romance author to my list with The Hot Shot. This is the first book in the Dugout series by Piper Rain. And I have read a ton of like sports subgenre romance novels. I don't know that I've ever read one set in baseball. So that is what this one is about. I've heard great things about it. It has pretty good ratings. And there is a main character who's raising their cousin's 3 children. And I believe this is the female main character. And then her best friend's older brother, who is a catcher on a baseball team, is kind of helping her in this situation. And so again, I've seen this around and thought I would give it a shot. I also have on my list more sports romance, the last 3 books in the Windy City series by Liz Tomford. So this includes the 3rd book, which is Caught Up, the 4th book, which is Play Along, and then the 5th book, which is Rewind It Back. And I read the first 2 books in this series over the last several months and really enjoyed them and wanted to just kind of like wrap up this series. There's another book that recently came out that is kind of a continuation, I think, of some of the characters from this series, kind of a spin-off. And that's kind of what reminded me to go back to this and wrap it up. I have all of those on audio, so I'm gonna listen to those. I also added to my list a book called Into the Blue by Emma Brody. This is a book that I have heard great things about. I don't know a ton about it. It says in the description, it is an epic, decade-spanning love story that blazes through the worlds of acting and comedy and charts a connection so powerful it might just break space and time itself. So I have heard that there's something in here that's kind of like a time travel or time bendy, component to this story. And again, like have just seen a ton of people like raving about it. A lot of people say it's kind of a tearjerker too. So I'm looking forward to trying that out. Also on my list is a book called The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow. And I picked this up because it is also being adapted and it was recently released. And I wanted to read the book before I watched the adaptation. I believe this is about the Bennett sisters that are discussed in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. And this covers the story of Mary Bennett's life and is kind of like a retelling of her life. And I just thought that sounded really interesting. It's also gotten pretty good ratings, so looking forward to picking that up. Also on my list is a book called The Paris Match by Kate Claiborne. I have read this author in the past and really have enjoyed her. This is a book about a woman who says she tests the limits of her so-called amicable divorce when she flies to Paris for the destination wedding of her former sister-in-law, but then butts heads with the deliciously gruff best man who I believe is like a friend of her former partner. Like it's kind of like all of these like family things that are kind of embroiled together. And obviously, starts to have a romance. So looking forward to that. And also I just thought like a Paris book in the summertime sounded really fun. Also on my list is a couple more series. I want to reread Shield of Sparrows, which is the first book in the Shield of Sparrows series by Devney Perry, and then read for the first time the second book in that series called Rights of the Starling. And really, I just want to remind myself whenever I read like the most recent book in a fantasy series, if I have not recently read the book before, I like to go back and reread it just to kind of like refresh myself in the world building and make sure I understand everything that's going on. I've also heard just incredible things about Rights of the Starling, and so I'm really excited to pick that up. The 3rd book in this planned trilogy, I believe, is coming out in spring of 2027, and so wanting to catch up on that before the next book comes out. Also, I have a short series called The Wildwood Chronicles by Colin Malloy. And this is 3 books. The first book is called Wildwood. The second book is called Under Wildwood. And the 3rd book is called Wildwood Imperium. I actually picked this up as a box set because it has these like beautiful illustrations. It's kind of like I think it's like a children's or like a YA trilogy. And it has these really beautiful illustrations in it. And so I wanted to have it as a hard copy, but I will probably mix between reading it in hard copy and listening to it on audio. It is described as for fans of the Chronicles of Narnia, so if that is of interest to you. And it is also, the author is the lead singer of the Decemberists, and then there's an acclaimed illustrator, Carson Ellis, who is known for the Mysterious Benedict Society, so if you're familiar with any of that. But this is about like a secret world within the landscape of a modern city. And it just sounds lovely. Like I love the illustrations. I love having it in hard copy. So I'm hoping to get through all 3 of those in June. I also have some nonfiction on my list. The first is The 6 Types of Working Genius by Patrick Lencioni. And this is a book that I have had recommended to me by a number of different people. It is basically talking about identifying the type of work that brings you joy and energy by kind of like sorting yourself into one of these 6 types. I think this could be useful for my coaching work and other things as well. So looking forward to picking that up. I also have a hard copy of Write a Must Read by A.J. Harper. This is a book that has been on my radar for a while. because I am a writer and I enjoy writing books. I wanted to pick this up. It is about crafting a book that changes lives, including your own. What a great subtitle. So I'm excited to read that. I also have on my list Yoga Revolution by Jivana Heyman. And this is a well-known yoga teacher that I have encountered in a lot of different places and spaces, who focuses a lot on advocacy, but also kind of like yoga and accessibility. And he teaches a lot around different kinds of bodies and like how do you have yoga be very accessible to different kinds of bodies, including bodies that are disabled or who are neurodivergent or who are kind of dealing with different forms of illness. And I wanted to pick up his book and see what else he had to say about it. Also on my list is a book called Hidden Brilliance. This is by Lynn Kern-Kogel. And this is a book, actually it has two authors, and Claire Lazebnik as well. And it says it is a groundbreaking exploration of the ways in which the intelligence and abilities of children and young adults with autism are often overlooked and misjudged. So I continue my reading on neurodivergence. This is focused more on kind of children and young people. So looking forward to picking up that as well. I happen to have a hard copy of that, so we'll be reading through it. And then my other challenge I'm setting for myself for the month of June is I wanted to read this year a series by Robert Crace, which is Elvis Cole and Joe Pike. And this is a long-running series. There's 20 books in this series. The first book is called The Monkey's Raincoat. So I'll put that up on screen. I will start with that. And this is actually a book that I've read before. In this particular series, I have read in the past 7 books, not all in the right order. And this was like over a decade ago that I have like read these books. So I remember nothing about this. It's basically about a pair of Hollywood private eyes. So it's kind of set in LA. A lot of these are like mystery noir thriller books. And the first one was published in like the mid to late 90s, I think. And then they have been publishing through now, like contemporary. And I wanted to go back and read this entire series. And so the challenge I set for myself was to actually try to get through as many of these in June as possible. So we will see how far I can get. I happen to have them all on audio because over time, when there have been audiobook sales, I have like picked up, the different copies of these books for like a few dollars a piece. And so I have all of them on audio, and I'm just gonna like blitz read and see how far I can get. What I remember of this series is I really like the two main characters. I like the interplay between them. I feel like they're incredibly smartly written, really well plotted. Like I remember just really, really enjoying like the mystery components of these series. So I'm excited to pick those up and see how far I can get in the month of June. So those are all of my predetermined books for the month of June. And next I'm going to pull up my TBR card pile, and I'm going to choose 5 cards, shuffling this deck, and then go into my Kindle backlist and choose 5 books based on the cards from my Kindle backlist. So let me go ahead and pull up my Kindle here and go into my collections, and then let's shuffle and see what cards I pull. So the first card I am pulling is choose a book from your favorite author. I have a lot of favorite authors. Okay, let me see what I can figure out of an author who's like a favorite. And first I'm gonna go into anything that I've like recently purchased and see if there's something that is in my recently purchased that would count for this. Book by a favorite author. I think what I'm gonna search for is, let me see if there's anything I have not yet read by this one particular author that I enjoy. Okay. So the author that I'm going to choose is Jodi Picoult. And she writes like family drama and also like kind of like legal thrillers a little bit. And I have read her for years and years and years and years. And she has a relatively recent book that has come out that I have not yet read called By Any Other Name. And this is a book that is about a playwright, and it goes back and forth, I think, between like a modern playwright and then it looks like a ward of English aristocrats in like the 1500s. And I think it also has like elements of like history and Shakespeare, and kind of like bringing in like Shakespearean plays and things like that. I don't know a ton about this other than it has like this Shakespearean element to it. One of the things I really appreciate about this author is how she brings in like a lot of historical research, when she's doing this kind of work. So I'm going to add that to my list for June. So that will be the first book. All right, now I'm going to shuffle again for card number 2. And my next card is read a book set in a small town. Read a book set in a small town. I feel like a lot of the books that I have that are like romance books are books that are set in a small town. Let me go there and see what I can find out. And there's actually a recent book that I purchased, and I'm wondering if this is set in a small town. Let me find out. I think it is. Okay, so this is a book. It's by an author I've not read. Her name is Melanie Harlow. It's called Heart's Landing. And the description says, 4 friends made a promise to live one night like it was their last. Then that night changed everything. 10 years ago, Mila left behind a devastating fire, a stolen kiss, and a shattered circle of friends in her hometown of Heart's Landing. But when a crisis brings her back, she just wants to get in and get out unscathed by her mother's constant criticism and unseen by her former crush, Everett. Only Everett is everywhere. He is the town's attractive, beloved mayor and has resisted settling down, but he's never stopped wondering about Mila. Having her back in Heart's Landing is the second chance he didn't know he was waiting for. So I definitely think this is like small town romance. So I am going to have this one added to my list. I also like reading things that I've like recently purchased as well, so they don't just like languish. All right, so that's going to go into June. All right, let's shuffle again for card number 3. And the card I am pulling is read a book set in Paris. Well, I already have a book set in Paris. Let me see what other. All right, so what I'm going to do is actually just search for Paris and see what comes up of books that I already own. Let's see here. Okay, so there's several historical fiction books. Let me check out and see if any of these, I want to make sure none of these are like in the middle of a series. And see if there's like a standalone here. Okay, the book I think I'm going to pick is called The Lost Girls of Paris by Pam Janoff. This is a historical fiction writer that I've read at least one other book by and really, really liked it. It is about, described as 3 women, one daring mission in 1946. One morning while passing through Grand Central Terminal, Grace finds an abandoned suitcase tucked beneath a bench. Inside is a dozen photographs, each of a different woman. She soon learns that the suitcase belongs to Eleanor Trigg, who's a leader of a network of female secret agents deployed out of London during the war. 12 of these women were sent to occupied Europe, and they never returned home. So she's setting out to learn the truth behind the women in the photographs. So this will be my book that is set in Paris. And it's kind of fun that I'll have more than one set in Paris for the month of June. All right, adding this to my list for June. Okay, we've got 2 more cards to pull. The next card says, choose a book with a 5-star prediction. Okay, so this is a book that I think will be a 5-star read for me. And I'm gonna go back actually to my recent purchased books and see if there's anything in here that feels like it could be a 5-star read for me. Oh, I know exactly what I wanna read. Okay, so this past month, I read my first book by Jax Calder. It was called The Revenge Club. I loved it. And there's a second book called The Revenge Mishap. And I've wanted to read this. So this is about a character who shows up in book 1, and this is like his story. And he's a tech consultant, and he tried to get revenge on his nemesis, and he hit the guy's brother instead and like injured him and broke his ankle. And now he's like trying to make amends to this guy. And of course, they have a romance. But I loved book 1. So I am looking forward to seeing what I think of this and seeing if I like book 2 as much as I like book 1. So it is called The Revenge Mishap by Jax Calder. I'm going to add that to my list for June. Okay, I've got one more card to pull. The last card for my June random books says, read the book that is at the very bottom of your shelf. Okay, so what I'm going to do is go into my collections on my Kindle and go to the very bottom of those collections, which includes a category on YA and children's lit. and I'm going to open up that shelf and see what's in here that I might want to read. Let's see. All right, there's a bunch here that I actually am like really intrigued by. I think the one I'm going to pick, and I'm going to look at the details here. This is a book by Ashley Elston. I don't think I've read this author before. It is called This Is Our Story. And it's a mystery with a big twist. It says 5 boys went hunting, 4 came back, and the evidence shows any one of them could be guilty. And it looks like there's a girl who's in a senior year internship with the district attorney's office. And then the office is like handed this case. And so she gets kind of embroiled in this case. And I know I happen to have this both on ebook and on audio. So I think I'm going to take this book, and this is going to be the one that I'm going to pick here. All right, so This Is Our Story by Ashley Elston is going to be added to my June pile, and those are my 5 extra books that I'm adding to my June 2026 TBR pile, and I am super excited for all of these reads coming up this next month. I hope you'll come back and check out my video in about a month's time to see how much I was actually able to get read, and until then, happy reading.